Has ambition, grievance, or envy ever slipped into your group and started rotting trust from the inside? Just notice this. In Numbers chapter 16, we see how a leadership crisis begins in private grievance and ends in public catastrophe. Yet even there, God gives signs, purifies what's left, and calls us to learn. Stay with me. I'll give you 1 immediate practice to check private jealousy and 5 biblical unlocks to help you understand Numbers chapter 16. In this episode of Biblical Unlocks, this show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. If you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Now, let's get a little bit of context into the chapter. So, Numbers chapter 16 actually narrates Korah's rebellion. Korah, who's a Levite, along with Dathan and Abiram and 250 leaders, are actually going to confront Moses and Aaron's leadership. And the conflict erupts into accusations about priestly privilege and leadership authority. And God actually is going to answer with a test. The earth swallows the main rebels, and fire consumes the 250 who offered censers. Later, a plague follows those who murmur, and Aaron's censer is used to make atonement, and the censers of the 250 are made into a reminder for the people. So this chapter is actually quite brutal, theological, and pastoral. It is a study in ambition, judgment, purification, and memorial. You don't need prior chat history to follow. This is about how leadership and jealousy can cause dissent among a people if left unchecked. So, without further ado, let's read verses 1 to 3. And my question to you is, where in your group might private grievances be forming public mutiny? Verse 1. Now Korah, son of Izhar, son of Kohath, son of Levi, along with Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, and On, son of Peleth of Reuben, took 250 Israelite men, leaders of the congregation, chosen from the assembly, well-known men, and they confronted Moses. They assembled against Moses and against Aaron and said to them, "You have gone too far. All the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. So why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" Alright, biblical unlock number 1. Private grievance can actually dress itself in doctrine and gather followers. And the rebellion that we see here, and many rebellions that we see, often begin as a little concern. Korah, who is a Levite, together with Dathan, Abiram from Reuben, and 250 leaders, assembled against Moses and Aaron and said, "You have gone too far." And the wording masks their own ambition as righteous critique. And here the theological point is, personal jealousy can easily frame itself as a public principle, and when leaders accept that mask without testing their own motives, the entire camp can fracture. Okay, let's read verses 4 to 11, where Moses is going to appeal to God. When Moses heard it, he fell on his face. Verse 5, Then he spoke to Korah and all his congregation, saying, "In the morning the Lord will make known who is his and who is holy, and who will be allowed to approach him. The one whom he will choose, he will allow to approach him. Do this, take censers, Korah and your congregation, and tomorrow put fire in them, and lay incense on them before the Lord, and the man whom the Lord chooses shall be the Holy One. You Levites have gone too far." Then Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you Levites, is it too little for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel, to allow you to approach him in order to perform the duties of the Lord's tabernacle, and to stand before the congregation and serve them? He has allowed you to approach him, and all your brother Levites with you, yet you seek the priesthood as well. Therefore you and all your congregation have gathered together against the Lord. What is Aaron that you rail against him?" Biblical unlock number 2. In this series of verses, we see that Moses responds by falling on his face and telling Korah and the company that if they are seeking God's work, God will show it. If not, he will establish who is holy. And Moses calls for a divine trial rather than human one-upmanship, and he appeals to God's adjudication instead of partisan rhetoric. This is so important because Moses always intercedes and appeals to God's reputation. We saw this in Exodus chapter 32, verses 11 to 14. And this shows that healthy leadership refuses to meet slander with slander, right? It takes accusations to God for public testing. Okay, let's read verses 12 to 22, because Dathan and Abiram will refuse mediation and they will amplify the spectacle. Verse 12, Moses sent for Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, but they said, "We will not come. Is it too little that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you must also lord it over us? It is clear you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, or given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Would you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come." Moses was very angry and said to the Lord, "Pay no attention to their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, and I have not harmed any one of them." And Moses said to Korah, "As for you and all your congregation, be present tomorrow before the Lord, you and they and Aaron. And let each one of you take his censer and put incense on it, and each one of you present his censer before the Lord, 250 censers. You also and Aaron, each his censer." So each man took his censer, and they put fire in the censers and laid incense on them. And they stood at the entrance of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. Then Korah assembled the whole congregation against them at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord appeared to the whole congregation. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, "Separate yourselves from this congregation, so that I may consume them in a moment." They fell on their faces and said, "O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one person sin and you become angry with the whole congregation?" Alright, biblical unlock number 3 here. When people refuse mediation, they narrate themselves as victim, and victim story becomes the seedbed of mob action. Because Dathan and Abiram reply publicly and with rage. They say, "We will not come," right? "Is it too little that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness?" They refuse the tent of meeting and appeal directly to the crowd, and they weaponize their discontent into a spectacle, because the theological point here is that when rebel leaders manufacture public grievance, they do so in order to legitimize their rank. This is the same thing we'll see in 1 Samuel chapter 8 verses 4 to 7, when the people demand for a king and frame it as a need, right? And this is where God presents his judgment. From verses 23 to 35, the earth is going to swallow, fire consumes, and holiness answers rebellion decisively. Verse 23, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, 'Speak to the congregation, saying, Get away from the dwellings of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram.' So Moses got up and went to Dathan and Abiram. The elders of Israel followed him. He spoke to the congregation, saying, 'Turn away from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing of theirs, or you will be swept away for all their sins.' So they got away from the dwellings of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the entrances of their tents, together with their wives, their children, and their little ones. And Moses said, 'This is how you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works. It has not been of my own accord. If these people die a natural death, or if a natural fate comes on them, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates something new, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, then you shall know that these men have despised the Lord." Verse 31, "As soon as he finished speaking all these words, the ground under them was split apart. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up along with their households, everyone who belonged to Korah and all their gods. So they, with all that belonged to them, went down alive into Sheol. The earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. All Israel around them fled at their outcry, for they said, the earth will swallow us too. And fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men offering the incense." Biblical unlock number 4. God's holiness protects the center. Sometimes judgment falls to mark the boundary between covenant life and self-willed anarchy. Because God tells Moses to separate himself from the congregation, the earth opens up and swallows Korah, Dathan, and Abiram with their households, and the fire consumes the 250 men who offered census. And the imagery is stark. The land, which is God's gift, refuses the riot, and the theological lesson is somber. Unchecked rebellion threatens the covenant body, and in God's economy, dramatic correction preserves the whole. Okay, next let's read verses 36 to 40. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Tell Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, to take the censers out of the blaze, then scatter the fire far and wide, for the censers of these sinners have become holy at the cost of their lives. Make them into hammered plates as a covering for the altar, for they presented them before the Lord, and they became holy. Thus they shall be a sign to the Israelites. So Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers that had been presented by those who were burned, and they were hammered out as a covering for the altar, a reminder to the Israelites that no outsider who is not of the descendants of Aaron shall approach to offer incense before the Lord, so as not to become like Korah and his congregation, just as the Lord had said to him through Moses. Okay, biblical unlock number 5. Judgment is used by God to instruct future faithfulness, a memorial forged from the ruins that prevents repetition. God commands Aaron to collect the bronze censers of the 250 and make them into a covering for the altar, a sign for the people, right? A sign for the people that no one who approaches God apart from his appointed way will live. And the censers become a didactic artifact. God sanctifies the warning so the community remembers the cost of rebellion. Then, finally, let's read verses 41 to 50. On the next day, the whole congregation of the Israelites rebelled against Moses and against Aaron, saying, You have killed the people of the Lord. And when the congregation had assembled against them, Moses and Aaron turned toward the tent of meeting. The cloud had covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron came to the front of the tent of meeting. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Get away from this congregation, so that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell on their faces. Moses said to Aaron, Take your censer, put fire on it from the altar, and lay incense on it, and carry it quickly to the congregation, and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has begun. So Aaron took it as Moses had ordered, and ran into the middle of the assembly, where the plague had already begun among the people. He put on the incense and made atonement for the people. He stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. Those who died by the plague were 14,700, besides those who died in the affair of Korah. When the plague was stopped, Aaron returned to Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Final biblical unlock. Even after the spectacle, human hearts can default to complaint. Intercession and sacramental atonement are needed to heal the community's sickness. So the next day the people grumble again, right? And a plague breaks out. Moses instructs Aaron to run into the assembly with incense to make atonement, and he stands between the living and the dead. The plague stops, and the final image is clear. Priestly mediation averts destruction when invoked faithfully. God's mercy still works even after judgment. So the idea here is, because of their ambition, because they forgot. It's actually symbolic of the Garden of Eden, where they were deceived into thinking they already weren't enough with God, where the serpent convinces Eve that she can become like God if she eats the fruit. But if you heard in Genesis chapter 1 verses 26 to 27, she was already created in the image of God. She didn't have to do that, but she did because of her ambition. So it is really important that we check our ambition, otherwise it can burn towards violent disarray. Okay, let's see how this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ. Numbers chapter 16 actually lays bare the danger of rival centers and the need for a true, faithful mediator. Christ is the perfect priest-king who neither seeks self-exaltation like Korah and company, nor tolerates chaotic rival complaints. He mediates, he intercedes, and secures a people by his life and sacrifice. Where Korah sought to usurp mediation, Jesus is the mediator who humbly serves the people and provides final atonement. As we read in Hebrews chapter 12 verses 22 to 24, "But you have come to Mount Zion, and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel." Alright, let's go through some practical applications now. I want to make sure that, number one, you check your ambition. So I want you to write one sentence naming any private grievance that you've rehearsed about a leader or a fellow Christian or anyone in the last month, and ask, is this a genuine covenantal concern, or is it just my personal ambition or hurt? If it is personal ambition or hurt, don't post, don't say anything. You need to pause and pray. You need to invite a trusted third party to mediate if you still feel burdened, because this habit is going to interrupt the Korah-like escalation that escalates private gripe to public mutiny. Alright, well that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. Next episode will open up Numbers chapter 17, which is going to build on the staff of Aaron that buds, God's final sign, settling priestly authority, and recalling a people to trust appointed ways. So if Numbers chapter 16 showed the cost of rival centers, Numbers chapter 17 reveals God's confirmation of faithful mediation. So don't miss it. So thank you for listening. Numbers chapter 16 is harsh, but it's holy, and it shows that unchecked grievance and ambition can kill communities. God sometimes judges to protect the whole, yet mercy and mediation always remain possible. So do the 5-minute audit of your ambition. Keep your complaint private, pray, and seek mediation rather than causing a fracture in the relationships that you have. And if you lead, consider remembering what is at stake. Remember that choosing restraint and mediation today may spare an entire generation from exile tomorrow. I know it sounds crazy, but you never know. Until next time, protect the center, refuse the mob, and let intercession and faithful mediation keep your community alive. And don't forget to follow and rate the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot. You can always change your mind later. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.